Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next session of the EA Global Summit 2020. This is Nizam from the organizing team. And here we have Johan Retto, the CEO of Ferrologic Enterprise Design with us. And Johan is going to present on information model as an asset. So this presentation will be a holistic approach of information modeling and how it's presented in Enterprise Architect. So we welcome you all for the session, and thanks, Johan, for joining us. A quick note to all the attendees, please use the Teams channel to log any questions, or if you want to have a discussion with Johan, we'll be requesting Johan to be available in the Teams to have a discussion with you post the session. And the link to the Teams channel will be shared in the chat window during the session. Once again, thank you, everyone, and over to Johan.
Oh, thank you, Nizam. Welcome to the webinar in Information Model as an Asset. My name is Johan Retto, and I work at Ferrologic Enterprise Design in Stockholm, Sweden. I have about 20 years of experience using Enterprise Architect and started off with version 3, if I remember right. And I work as a consultant, teacher, mentor, MDG developer. Well, I do most things you can do with Sparks. So let's have a look into the agenda. So this presentation will not talk very much about how to create information models. That could be a topic for another session, but instead I wanted to show you how usable an information model and how very important it is to have an information model as a core asset of your digital journey when you go into digitalization. So I start off with talk about information value, followed by a holistic view of information models. And then we look into the governance of information modeling, seeding and security classification, and also how you can use information and map that to other core models. So let's have a look at information value. So to create business value from information, you first need to have information and then know that you have information. It's still no use until you can reach it. So if you can reach information, you know that you have it, then you have information availability. Now it becomes a bit more tough. Well, if I can reach the information, I don't understand it. It's not very much use. So if you can get, say, 12. So what does 12 mean? I don't understand. What's 12? So then you need extra information. You need meta information about the information. Like it's a temperature, 12. Okay, but I still don't understand. What's 12? What temperature, 12? Well, if you add information that, it's the temperature in Stockholm. Okay, now I know it's the 12 degrees in Stockholm. The next step is to trust the information. Do I trust it? I just went out with my dog and it didn't feel like 12 degrees. So I need even more information. I use the information I have because I have been out. I can compare that to the information and I don't trust it because it's probably not 12 degrees. So I need to find out at what time was it 12 degrees and where in Stockholm was it 12 degrees. So you see, when people start to use data, they try to add information and compare it with the knowledge they have, and then it becomes information. So information is the value of the data that when you understand it. So this is really hard to get up to this level of trusting information. That's an interesting view of this is actually that this comes in the same way with models. You have models, you need to know that you have them, you need to reach them, you need to understand them. Do people understand our models? Do they trust them? Well, for information, if you trust your information, then you can start processing it and concluding on it, and then you have information use. But we're not at the top level, we need to get business value by being able to decide and act on information. That's when we get information benefits. So this pyramid it's really a struggle. Everyone struggles with this, and it's good to understand how this works and how to get up past trust. Master data management is one technique. Governance of data governance is of course another technique. We try to use a lot of these techniques to trust the information, to be able to act and become data driven. So let's look at the information model from a holistic perspective. A problem or a possibility actually is that different departments in an organization use the same words. They use at HR, they have a customer, and the customer is probably you as an employee. You're the customer for HR. If we go to finance, the customer is probably someone paying the invoices, or maybe management. At IT, the customer is a user of their systems. All of these use the business vocabulary, they use customer. So if a finance person talks to an HR person and they talk about customers, they will probably not understand each other. That's what when information models come into use, because if we map the business vocabulary to the information model, we can map the finance to the party in the information model, and in HR we can map it to the employee. So information models are actually business information requirements as a logical model. So you store all the definitions, you store the relations, the rules, the multiplicities, that's kind of rules, if there must be one or more, etc., in the information model. And by making this traceability from the concept models, the concept models is used to understand what the business actually means with what they say. And many projects actually fail just because they don't understand this. They don't understand the vocabulary. So they think a customer is something else than it is. So this information model then is really a core asset, and it can be used for many purposes. One of the techniques, this is a technique that has been around for a long time, is making a platform independent model from the information model. So you apply a transformation just by running the transformation. This transformation usually removes all spaces in names and attributes and things like that. They also add type information to the platform independent model. So that can be used for technical purposes. It's quite easy to do this kind of transformation. I wrote some of them myself. So if you just look into the naming, for example, you can see that if the name is something with date, you could set the type in the platform independent model to date. Or if the model is, if it includes an ID, you can set the type to int or something. Well, so what should we use the platform independent model for? Well, so of course, we produce platform specific models like data models, XSD models, C# models. We can use it for schema composition. And from those models, we can, of course, generate source code. And this is really nothing new. This has been around for many, many years. And I've been using this at least for 15 years. But the thing that's important here is to understand that if we look into the information model, we can see that this model is really well documented. And another thing here is that you can see there's no attributes showed here, but there are attributes on everything. That is to make the model more readable, understandable for humans. So the models we create are done for humans to understand how the business works. And this is fun to work with, because the business people usually, they think that IT can fix it. Yeah, it's not that complicated, but they have been working for maybe 20, 30 years in the company, and everything seems to be so simple for them. So when you start to make a model of what they know, they realize how complicated things are. And you really need to have that to understand and to be able to build support for them. So information model is like dragging the information out of business people and documenting it. And one of the core things that are very important here is just the documentation. So if we transform this model to a platform independent model and look at the documentation, we see everything follows. So we get all the documentation that was done in the information model into the platform independent model. So how does it look in the, let's take the DDL. Well, it's here also. So everything we've done when struggling with getting information out from the business people are coming down into our data models all the way. And what about the SQL code? Well, if we look down here in the creation of the tables, in the end, we can see that all the comments that tells what they are here. In the same way as if you look into, for example, the C# code, you see that every attribute is documented, which means that the understanding of what things are will be much easier and transparent if you use the model in this way. In the company I worked for, they spent like 50% of their time to design their messages in the integration team. So we set out to do something about that. So we used the Schema Composer, and let's look into a project here. And this is really easy to use. The only thing you need to do is to look into the browser and then go to the Common Assets Information Model. Then you can pull in, for example, the customer here. Just pull it here, and then you can click in if you like the credit limit, for example, and customer category. They will come up here. Credit limit. So it's really easy to use this, and that means that they can design their messages much more efficient, and the documentation of all the information that is exchanged between systems is also documented in all the code, the JSON code here, or XSDs, or whatever they like to use. So by using the information as an asset, the documentation or the definitions of things will follow. So if you have a high quality information model, then you can reuse that and get a lot of values from it. I would also like to show you the problem up here by opening a matrix. So let's, oops, have I? Glossary. I'm sorry.
All could hit. Just all.
Well, what I would like to show you here was actually that the mapping between the concepts information model was that the information, the concept of the customer is not the same for any of these departments. So I think you get the point. So these traces are actually pulling down to different parts of the information model. So, and that is also something I will show you a little bit further on, of that that will actually help to use the information model. So let's move on then to governance and have a short look at how you govern process models. Actually, it works the same way, independent of what type of models you work. If we starting point here should be that you already have had a workshop with business and you have done the modeling, and now it's time to approve this model. So the first step would probably be that the model checks through the model and compare it to the guidelines and do the updates in the Enterprise Architect. And after that, he sets the element status to ready for approval. And then you approve the model together with the owner of the information, and you set the element state to approved. And when it's approved, you publish the model, and that depends on which environment you have. If you have like a web server, you publish it to that. First, you move the information and make baselines and so forth to the common assets, and then you generate. But if you have Collaborate or WebEA, just by moving them to the common asset will make them available, so you don't need to do very much more. So when doing this work, we found that using Kanban is really a really nice tool to do this. So you get a nice overview of all the information elements, in which states they are, which are approved, which are ready for approval, etc. So this is a really nice way of doing that. Another very important thing doing this is to trust information. And if you want to trust information, you need to know things. You need to know things about who done things. So let's see if this is a new thing in Sparks. If you go to Configure, Administer, and go to Group Workflows, so you could say here for all users, they can, from proposed, set the state to in progress or ready for approval, not to approved. But an approver, it has the possibility from proposed to set it to in progress and ready to approval. And if it's ready for approval, the approver can set the element state to approved, which a user cannot do, as you can see here. So this simple tool, and you don't forget to enable it, will make it impossible for anyone to approve anything if you're not an approver. And I think this kind of things makes models more trustable. So if you know that only a few persons are allowed to approve things, then the approved elements are approved by someone who knows what he's talking about or she's talking about. So I think that's also something that makes this process work much better. Yes. Okay. Next thing is seeding. Well, to start with, the problem here is actually that the information model grows. The information model in an international company might consist of more than 100 information domains. And in each domain, you might have at least 10 information classes. 10 times 100 is 1,000 information classes, and that's quite a lot. And it's not that easy to find yourself around there, which might result in that people think that the information model is too complicated. They don't understand it. The other thing is that when you do information model, it's a normalized model, and it's also kind of abstract. We use abstract terms to say that we have a party, not a customer. We have a party that's could be a person or an organization, for example. So we have an abstraction of, and that makes the model even harder to understand for business people. But the business people, they have a business vocabulary. If we have a traceability between them, we could actually do something with it. So let's look at the situation here. We have a new team starting up, working with making an app for the finance department. So we create a project space for them to work in, and they create a local diagram, and they drag all the business vocabulary things onto this. They will pull up the customer, they will pull up the invoicing, etc. on this diagram. Well, that's something you could understand. So the next step, when you selected all the concepts, the business vocabulary on this diagram, would be to use these traceability, these links. So if you run a script that follows these trace and create a subset of the information model, and that subset is just designed for the finance. It's just it's the same elements as in the information model, but it's a local view of the information model we have here. This could be done in like an hour or two, and then you have your information model, and you start to understand the complexity of what you're up to. And it's still the morning. And the next step should actually be to clone this model, because you're not allowed to do changes here. It's locked for you. So you do a cloning. You clone it to information model 1.1, for example. And this tailored model will be the starting point for you to make changes to the information model that you need to do in your project. You can also use this for transformation to the platform independent and platform specific models, which means actually that you could create a database or whatever in before launch for the project. And that would be a really agile way of starting up a project, I think. So the reason why you do this is because the information model becomes large and it's complicated to understand it. Very few people have the whole knowledge about it, maybe no one, or maybe just the information architect. And by doing this, we have an agile way to tailor project-specific information models. And it really comes to work when you do this. You do the changes here, as I mentioned, and you can use it for specific PIM models. And let's say wait for half a year or something when they have done many sprints. This information model here might consist of more things. They might have added attributes and things they needed. And then the information architect could actually harvest this model and see if other usable things we can put back into the information model. So the next time you do a seeding, you will have the harvested things. And writing this kind of scripts is really easy. It's just following these. And when you follow them to the information model, you have to follow generalization structures and aggregation structures. And maybe you restrict yourself to one level between from the element to the next. Depends on, but it's not really hard to do this. It's really easy, and it gives a lot of value. So, well, if you look into them, the finance you have, and this is also a nice feature, I think, the glossary entries in Sparks. Here we have finance and the concepts. If you right click here, you can reload the glossary and update it. And if you can see here, if you see customer here, you can read that customer.hr, employee who has a current contract and concept on finance, party, internal or external, who pay invoices. So we can see actually all the definitions, what different parts of the organization things different words mean. In this case, the customer. Isn't this really nice? I really love it. Yeah, so let's continue. Or maybe, should we, if you like, you could look into the local diagram here. And we can see that the customer we have dragged in actually have a trace to the information model party here. And we can see the attributes and things like that. And the subset of the information model might look like this, because it's a party and it picked up some of the relations around it. And if we back the information model here, is cloned and only the organization is checked out. Check out like this, clone element as a new version, and then you get a new version of that. Very simple. Save that, and let's go back to the agenda. Okay. The next thing I'd like to talk about is security classification and ISO 27001. The process of is to implement ISO 27001 is to start with enter the assets into an inventory, and because you need to manage all kinds of assets, you really need some kind of way where you put all the documents, your emails, your everything that you have classified. But the next step, classification of information, labeling of information, those steps could be done in Enterprise Architect, or at least the ones that has to do with the with information system and databases, that kind of classified information. Maybe not paper documents and things like that, but some of these can be managed in Enterprise Architect. So if we look into the party and customer, this part of the information model, we can see here's a person. And if we look in the properties, this person can be classified. Confidentiality could be set to like C2, for example. And you also see that we have added a small c, and depending on the level, so C3 is more, and that is totally secure. It's classified. No one will be able to see that guy. So C1 is usually set to like open information. C2 is like internal information. C3 is classified and totally classified if it's but ISO 27001 is not telling you which the levels you should use. But this is a very common way of doing it. They say that you need to specify them yourself. But we can add, let's say, low level of that. And you can also see that there's a small guy there. So if you set that to false, the guy disappears. But if you pull it in true, you know that there is person information, that's GDPR information, that you probably need to be careful about. So if we want to classify an organization, we can say that it's master data managed. It's C2. Availability should be high, and traceability also high, and there's no person information in organization because the person information is here. So this seems to be very simple, isn't it? Well, to be honest, the reason we did this was because the organization, they classify their systems. So the system is classified of the most classified information. So everything in that system is classified as really the highest level of anything that's in the system. So no one knows why the classification are as they are, or what makes them that high. And that restricts the possibilities to use the data, which is a bad thing. So if you have really high amounts of data, like terabytes of data, and you would like to do some machine learning or analytics on this data, it's much cheaper to do that in the cloud. And if you could know what information is classified, you could maybe cut out pieces of that and replace it with something like the person could be replaced by the town he lives in. So you can make analytics, but you don't have the person information at all in the data that you're analyzing. And that makes you take control of your information. You start to understand what makes the information classified, and you're much better off and can understand, and you can also communicate, because the security people, they want to have their back free, and that's the reason usually they why it's so hard to and if you can prove that you have control, they might let you do things. But as I just mentioned, it's a simplification just to do this, but this is usually much more than most organizations have. It's of course possible to classify on a more detailed level, on the attribute level. And I would say this is really hard, even this. So if you do it on the attribute level, you will have a lot of much more work to do that. And then there is actually another aspect on this. If you have clusters of information, like you have 200 or 15 organizations in your data, that might make it a higher classification. Or maybe if you have less than a certain number of organizations, that might make it classified. And the information model is not really suited for managing this. So the way you could manage it is to look into creating requirements, like security requirements. So you could write a requirement like confidentiality will increase to C3 if collections of more than 15 elements. That could be a security requirement. So we just take that and drop it on the organization, and then it's documented. If you generate a report or if you pull it out, you will see that it's connected to this. You usually don't want to show this in the diagram. Well, let's jump back. Okay. Back to the agenda. Yes. The next thing is about how to map. Now, when we have this information model defined and so forth, we would like to see where is that information used in our systems. So by creating a diagram for each application, so each application, these are Archimate applications, you make each of these composite, so you can click on them, and there's a documentation of the system in the middle, and to the left you have the systems that provide the system with information, and then you can also add what information is provided. So you could right click here and then advanced information flow realized, and let's remove that just to see how it works. Sorry, let's remove that too. And by adding information here, you go to the information model, common assets, information model, and you pick out customer, let's see, organization perhaps, customer, and party. like this. And this actually means that the information model is mapped to the information exchange between the systems. And it's possible to create reports and see where is this information used, where is it exchanged, and so forth. Of course, you often also map what information is mapped to each system. So you could click on the system and create a map where you see which information is in that system. The reason you do this kind of models, this is an information flow. So it's just showing the direction of the information. It's moved from the MDM system to the sales system. This is a human picture. It's not describing the details of the integration. And if you'd like to do that, I would recommend you, because many customers, they have lots of these. They have maybe 600 systems, and each system has at least 10 integrations. That's 6,000 diagrams that should be updated and trustable and so forth. I wouldn't do that. But if you could make the integration team make their process include the design of the integration, then they could create these diagrams. And if they do, you could, of course, make a link here so you can click on this integration and see how it's designed between which systems it's or service it's moved and so forth. So I believe that it's a good idea to do that only if you have a process where it's part of it to design your integrations. And I think this comes with a lot of things. So my thinking is that you should do less modeling, but make them more trustable and usable. And I found this kind of modeling really great. One of the reasons is because you can analyze it. So you could colorize this with like the end of lifetime or things like that, and very simple, and then you can understand on an architectural level how this works. So I think I'm a bit ahead of schedule, but let's continue here. So as a summary of this is that the information model is really a stable model. It's not changed very much. It's usually you add things to it, you develop it, and also it's easy to, if you don't have an information model, you can like go like a thread through all the way from the business vocabulary down to code, or the other way, you could actually from existing databases reverse and try to do the information model based on what the information that's in there. The information model is usually on different levels. If you start from the business side, they are really easy to understand, or at least easy. If you have a business that is really digitalized from the beginning, you might have more technical models as information models. So it depends on your maturity in information, which level you make these in. But it's really important to have this model governed and use it as a core assets and understand the value of it. So if you really put a lot of effort into including the definitions and the business logic into this information model, it really creates value for you. So it can be transformed to other models, and you get all these definitions, and that will document your model. And another way of using this is like you can reverse engineer a database, and then you can map that to the information model and write a report in Sparks operating on the data model, pulling out the documentation from the information model, and you have the documentation of your data model from the information model. And that's a way we have been working sometimes to document databases just by making the mappings and then generating the documentation. It's also good to compare different data models. What are these fields? What do they mean? And then you can see where they are stored. Another nice thing, I think, is that we must be more agile. I think modeling should be higher speed than agile teams. We should run before them. We should, if we know where they are heading, we go to the business, do their workshop, and then we give them a model that is suited for what their needs, so they don't have to redo things. That will speed up the agile team also doing the right things and understanding the right things. I think the security classification of the information gives also an extra value to the information model and makes it more usable, and you can trust, you get a better understanding of the information you have in your business. And the seeding way of working is really nice. It works, it's simple, it's quick, and it makes us more agile, supporting agile teams with models and code, actually making them even more agile and quicker. Everything has to be much quicker, and by adding this way of working, we can really catch up with them. And if we also know where information is used, we see what happens if they remove systems, what information is lost then, and so forth. So that's also a good thing to know where information is used. And as I see it, the information model as an asset is a structured capital, and the structured capital is really a big value for many companies. It's maybe the only value for some companies. And that is actually the foundation for the digitalization and data-driven companies. So it helps you to take control of your information. So that's a summary, and I think I'm on time now. So thank you very much for listening to this webinar, and I will try to answer all the questions you have in Teams afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Johan. It was a really good presentation, and I don't know how many of us noticed. It took a while for many of us to notice that it's completely done in EA and a very extensive usage of layers and all the custom diagrams. So it looked like a really well done PowerPoint presentation, but completely done in EA. That's a first takeaway for many of us, including myself and Ian. A really wonderful presentation. There were quite a number of feedback and questions in the Teams. Maybe we have a few minutes and I can quickly ask a few questions. So there's a question from Michael which says, would you recommend modeling information models in UML rather than in Archimade's business or application layers?
I start off, Archimate is not suited for information modeling at all, because it doesn't support attributes. So you can't do it there. But what you do is you do business objects, and a business object is like an information domain. So when you click on an order or something, you come into an information model that is a UML model. And usually I try to make them as simple as possible, not showing attributes and things like that, making different views. So if you have a developer, you have the attributes. If you have a business person, you remove them. So just to make it so simple as possible. And that's also the reason why I use this, this feature appearance, enable custom draw style, making them PowerPoint-like. It's to just make things look not complicated. I think that's a takeaway. You need to make them less complicated. So the answer to the question is, well, use Archimate for business objects and make them composite, click on them, and underneath you have the information model, UML, or your choice. We do MDGs for those, just to make it simple. I think you can see like this. Go to the toolbox. No, that was strange. Should be. Why? Here. So what we do MDGs just to make it simple. You have primary elements, secondary, and these are just UML, just color on them, and list values are enumerations, and domains is just a background. So you just get the things you need to get done with this, and some tag values like the security things. It's really, really simple, but it makes it much easier for the modeler. They shouldn't need to care about that. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. So as Robert says, very interesting presentation. Thank you. Will this be available afterwards? So I think there is two parts
I hope so.
to this answer. One is the video will be made available later on for your reference, but I think he's also referring to the presentation.
Yes, I will make it available. I just need to include the MDGs into the model, and then I can share it. And yeah, I will.
Okay, so again, as I said, like there are many more questions. You can already see notifications popping up in your screen, but maybe just I'll finish with one more question. Ian asks, the meta model for your MDG, does it use ISO 27002 terms?
That's a good question. The meta model, I think I know what she's referring to. Well, it's not really in the MDG. It's actually in the information model MDG, and it's just tag values for classification. And because ISO 27001 doesn't really state which you should use, so we just set them 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's usually open information, internal information, classified information, and totally really secret information. Have those 4, and nearly everyone uses them. And well, it's not a complete ISO 27001. It's just the adding that possibility to look at your information from a security perspective. So it's not very core 27001. So I think I'd say no on that question. It's not in the meta model core. No.
Okay. So I guess that makes sense. And again, maybe I think we have many more questions and feedback in the Teams channel. So thank you very much for your time. Maybe we should continue our discussions in the channel and let people interact and ask you more questions as you respond. We thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation in a very short notice. So we understand the kind of schedule you were working on, and despite that, you took time to do this presentation. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending this and making this special.
Thank you. Bye.